Good afternoon. This is Stephen Aquario of the New York State Association of Counties. And I have with us Kate Holman, David Lucas, and Mark Levine. And the Association of Counties, on behalf of its president, William Cherry, and the board of directors, are pleased to present today's webinar presentation on establishing and, importantly, continuing county-based 911 cellular surcharges. With us here today, we have, thankfully, the expertise of Ms. Mary Ellen Ladisser and Stephanie Scalzer from the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance, who will help us walk through the important steps that local governments will need to take over these next few days, few weeks. Recent state law changes will require county governments to enact local laws to update local county cellular surcharge laws. And our members of the Association of Counties have asked for guidance, in particular, to meet the important deadlines that exist in the new state law. We're very pleased to announce that the slides that you'll see here on this presentation, hopefully you're seeing them, will be made available on the Association of Counties website under the section called Rescuing 911, where we have posted the enabling resolutions that were distributed to the counties a few weeks ago. Lastly, I'll say if your county is not in a position to meet the statutory requirements to have both resolutions in place during the month of July, or one of them in the month of July, you will need to, and if you are still interested in having that passed, but within the 90-day window, you will need to seek a waiver from the New York State Department of Tax and Finance for that to be effective. And you can either do that by simply letting the Association of Counties know, and we are keeping a list, and we will inform the State Department of Tax and Finance, or you may contact them directly with your plans. So with that said, we'll turn it over to Mary Ellen. Mary Ellen, are you there?
Hi, we're here. Thank you, Steve.
Very good. Thanks,
I'm
Mary
going
Ellen.
to let Stephanie Scalzo, an attorney on our staff here who worked on the draft legislation, walk through the slides and explain how the law changes work and what needs to be done to enact or to maintain the surcharges.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, hello. So the current authorization under county law that most counties in New York City have the authority to impose right now is on postpaid wireless communication service. And this current authority has a fee of up to 30 cents of a surcharge per month per device in use during the month. And of the collections, the wireless carriers and suppliers are allowed to retain 2% of those collections. And the surcharge rate as it is right now is administered individually by each locality that imposes it. Now that surcharge will expire November 30th, 2017, and it will be replaced by the new tax law, Section 186G surcharges. And it's surcharges because there's a postpaid portion as currently exists, as well as a second component for prepaid service. The new surcharges apply to New York City and all counties outside of New York City. So it expands it from, I think there's a handful of counties right now that aren't authorized under county law. So they will be authorized for the new surcharges. The county law revenue spending provisions are incorporated into the new tax law 186T surcharges, so that won't change for the counties. And the surcharge must be imposed on both prepaid and postpaid. So counties that have the surcharge on postpaid now cannot continue that. They would need to adopt it for both prepaid and postpaid. Then the rate would be 30 cents per month per device for postpaid and 30 cents per retail sale for prepaid. A difference between the current locally administered surcharge and this one is that it is collected and administered by the state, and it will be consistent with the sales tax rules, tax laws, Articles 28 and 29. And the rate for sellers and suppliers to retain this administrative fee increases from 2% to 3% of collections. But a caveat of that is that the sellers and suppliers must timely file their returns in order to receive the benefit. Okay. So, yeah, I'm going to the next slide.
Okay, next slide. So,
thank you.
Great.
In order for localities to impose a surcharge, they must enact a local law, an ordinance, or resolution. This enactment would repeal the current surcharge in place and adopt the new state-administered surcharges, all in one enactment.
Yeah, and I will just jump in here a little bit. Currently, there's, most counties have authority to impose a surcharge under the county law, but that authority is repealed effective December 1st. So in order to continue to impose a surcharge, on the postpaid, similar to what they currently have, you need to create a new enactment under the new enabling law. Part of that is because it's a new enactment and it requires the surcharges have changed. It's not just postpaid now, it's prepaid. It's all those phone cards and minutes that get sold. And part of that is that, because the tax department's going to be administering the surcharge, we have to be able to see the local enactment, similar to what we do with the counties, and you're all familiar with for the additional rates of tax that are imposed, additional sales tax rates. So because we're administering them, we were not in a position to administer enactments that we had never seen. But those are, and those enactments are, we sent models out, and the Association of Counties was very helpful in getting those out to you. And we sent them out ourselves, belts and suspenders, to make sure that every county who needed to see one would get the model enactment, and that enactment will do exactly what Stephanie's describing here. So,
okay.
You want to?
Yeah, and those enactments.
Turn it back.
Legislation allows localities to impose the enactment now to take effect December 1st. So that's what.
Let me interrupt you, Stephanie. Let me interrupt you right there. This is Stephen Aquario, and let me remind or inform our county officials that are with us here today. If you have a question, you could simply just type that question right into that question bar right on your screen there, your chat box, and we can pull that question up and pose it to our presenters here today. But let me go back to emphasize, Mary Ellen, what you were saying here, because a lot of questions that we have taken are if the government did not want to do anything on a prepaid cellular phone and they just wanted to keep things the way they are, why do they need to do something? And I think you explained that, but I think it's worth repeating that all of the governments, the 57 plus the city of New York, will have to act and pass a new enabling resolution to continue the collection of the post-paid surcharges, and because you mentioned why, but also the manner in which the tax is being collected, it's no longer going to be paid directly to the county. And that is a large change that was made. It's going to be collected by the state and then remitted similar to sales tax. So I just want to reemphasize that for our county officials.
That's correct, and I think that's really important. You do need to act. You can't just say, oh, I'll keep what I have, because the authority to keep what you have is going away. And what the new enactment will allow is it will allow a broader base, and it will relieve the counties of the administration responsibility. The state will take that over, and then we have the ability to make that more efficient, and we will look at businesses on audit to see if they're correctly remitting for both the state and the locality. So that puts the burden of administration at the state level. Okay.
So yeah, as you're just saying, that the surcharge can be imposed on the first day of any sales tax quarter, and it'll be administered like sales tax.
But if counties have it and want to continue it, there's an urgency to keep it to get it effective by December 1.
December 1st.
Right.
Then moving on to the submission process for local enactment.
Okay. We can move to the next slide, please.
Thank you.
Okay, we should have it there now.
We do. There you go.
So at least 90 days prior to the effective date of when the county wants their surcharge to be imposed, the county needs to mail by certified or registered mail a certified copy of their enactment with the clerk's raised seal, and also include a waiver request if the enactment is 30 days prior to the effective date. The waiver request should be enclosed with the certified copy. And just want to mention again, it should be mailed by certified or registered mail. And then we've listed the address here to mail your enactment. And then within 5 days of doing that, the county should also file certified copies with the Secretary of State, State Comptroller, and the county or city clerk.
So let me just jump in here a little bit about waivers. So yes, the statutory rules are exactly the same as sales tax for local options and for additional rates, that you need to give 90 days notice to the tax department or request a waiver, and the commissioner is authorized to waive down to 30 days. We have never refused a waiver request, and typically we don't even, it helps us to know in advance if you are planning to seek a waiver so that we can keep track and make sure that counties don't fall through the cracks. But you submit the waiver request in writing to us with the enactment. If you do that on or before November 1st, then you're good to go. So it's, it certainly helps for us to know about that in advance, so that we can make sure that everybody is aware of what the deadlines are and that something doesn't slip through the cracks. But the waiver request is submitted in writing to us with the local enactment on or before November 1st. That should give a little bit more time leeway for the counties to do their local enactments and to work within their existing legislative schedules and whatever other time pressures that they have.
All right, so just to Mary Ellen, so one of the questions came in here that we're seeing here is, and again, you are addressing the question. The question was, we only have until July to pass the enabling resolution. Is that correct? Yes, but as you mentioned, a waiver, they should take it up in their August board meeting if possible, or as soon as practical for that government, and simply notifying the department that they're not going to be able to get it on the July docket, and the state will be issuing a waiver. So we did have a question coming in about the timing of it again.
Right, and as I said, the waiver has to be technically by written request, but we accept that written request along with the enactment, as long as it comes in by the November 1st date. So you don't need to act by July. I mean, obviously sooner is better, and we always appreciate a courtesy of a heads up if you're going to not make the 90 days, so we can keep track of who's planning to enact. And we are absolutely available and would love to help you if you need to make any tweaks to the local enactment or the model enactment, and you send them to us. We're happy to look at them and make sure that they're sufficient, so that as we go through this process, we don't have any defects that we don't have time to correct.
I just want to, Marianne.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
You've never refused a waiver. You were going to see this, say the State Department. Yeah.
Exactly.
And thank you.
We've never refused a waiver.
And thank you for that.
Like I said,
sometimes it is difficult for the government to. Sometimes it's difficult for the government to get it on the docket. That's all. And we do appreciate the flexibility of the State Department.
Absolutely.
Okay, so one of the other questions that came in was we will be posting the slide deck, again, that you're viewing here today will be posted on the NISAC website under the section Rescuing 911. So the slides that you're seeing here today will be posted on there. Another question came in, have any of the state's public safety associations supporting the new surcharge? Yes. The law enforcement community is in full support of the increased surcharge. The 911 coordinators, the State Sheriff's Association, and I imagine most of the other municipal and state police unions are supportive of it. So Mary Ellen, back to you.
Okay, well, I was going to say that is pretty much the breadth of our presentation, but we're happy to take questions. And I understand we'll have some contact information at the end of this slide presentation, and certainly use that information, that contact information, to reach out if you have questions. We're happy to assist you. We'd rather assist you sooner rather than later to avoid any hiccups.
Okay, so before we take a few more questions, we're going to turn over to David Lucas now. He'll talk about some of the revenue forecasts. We do have some questions coming in about revenue projections on the prepaid as opposed to the postpaid. So let's go to Dave Lucas from the Association of Counties.
Hello, everybody. We don't have super great data on the cell phone usage or subscriptions on a county-by-county basis. So I think for the most part, folks are going to have to back into an estimate in some way. And a lot of you will have the ability to build off your postpaid. You're already collecting on it, so you can use that as a starting point for some of your calculations. But before we get into the specific things, I wanted to highlight the assumptions DOB used when they calculated how much revenue the state would retain from the 90-cent portion of their surcharge. So what they basically did, and as they indicated, so some of the data is a little old. They used 2011 FCC data, and they've trended it forward to 2017. They're assuming about a 2% annual growth in active subscriptions, which puts the number of subscriptions in New York at about 22.5 million. So we are beyond our population in our state for cell phones, but that is consistent with the numbers nationwide. It's also very consistent with our own internal estimates at NISAC. We came up with almost exactly the same number as far as the number of phones or subscriptions we think are active in the state right now. And again, the second point, they assumed that about 23% of current subscribers are prepaid in the wireless market, and they got this data talking to the cellular companies. We got similar information back from them. one of the differences in prepaid and postpaid is the prepaid is, and Tax and Finance can jump in if I'm incorrect, but it's based on the transaction at the point of sale. So some people may pay for a whole year in advance. Some people may pay multiple months, what equates to multiple months at a time. So the issue is how many transactions per year per subscription is there going to be. So what the state did is they kind of split the difference and they balanced it across somebody that may pay once a year versus someone who may pay 12 times a year once a month. So they're basically assuming 6 transactions a year per subscriber. Then they're being conservative. They're using a 95% collection rate off of, you know, the total universe of possible collections, which accounts for the vendor credit of 3% that the tax department mentioned, and there's also a certain amount of non-compliance or ratcheting up that the vendors will need to do, so there could be some leakage in actual collections. So after they went through this process, the state assumed they'd collect about $26 million on a full annual basis from the 90-cent surcharge. And obviously, they just extrapolated down to the 30-cent surcharge as about, you know, 33% of what they're collecting, and they're assuming we'd get about $9 million. Next slide. And the next slide just kind of goes through the math of the way they described the process. And as you can see, it gets to the $26.5 million and how they got to their dollar amount. Next slide. And since we don't have county by county data, we think there's a couple different approaches you could use. The first, you could convert their fiscal estimate to a per capita amount. You know, you could take the $26.5 million divided by the people in the state, and when you do the math, it comes out to about $1.30 or so per person at 90 cents. So you could back into a number at the 30-cent surcharge and use your own population as an estimate. You know, it gets you to about 45 cents per person in surcharge collections. That's going to be a very rough estimate in a ballpark, and there's some other nuances to the cellular penetration rate and subscription rate in different counties. The cellular industry will tell you there's a pretty direct correlation between income and the number of subscriptions you'll see in a county, and also there are indications that depending on signal strength, up at the Adirondacks, you know, you're probably not going to have a household full of multiple subscriptions just because there's not great signal strength. So those are factors to consider. The other thing you could do is if you currently have postpaid, you could assume 23%. We've been rounding at 20% in our calculations at NISAC that, you know, 20% of the market's prepaid, and then you could just build off of that using your current postpaid collections and assume a percentage of the market's not being collected, that 30 cents, and you would just build off of that. I've talked to a few counties that have gone through this analysis both ways, that have postpaid already, and there doesn't seem to be any model or any patterns showing. One county did the math, and the per capita numbers were very low compared to their actual collections. For another county, the per capita came in higher when you looked at it as compared to just extrapolating off your postpaid. So I know some counties are going to do both of these analysis, see where they end up, and split the difference potentially as a starting point. And this first calculation, next slide, is for prepaid. If you're a county that doesn't have a postpaid currently, you would probably use the same model again and break it down into a per capita basis to figure out what your postpaid collection could be. I'm not going to walk through that again. And then from there, you would build on, you know, what is your prepaid potential in a county that's never established the postpaid surcharge at all. Another option you could do is if you're a county that's never done the cellular surcharge before, you could look at comparable counties and population and demographics and see what they're collecting. We could always help with that. You know, you could just call us and say we haven't done it, and you know, or we could find out what certain counties are collecting. So, as I said, we don't have perfect data for this for the first year, but if you implement on December 1st and you're building your budget for 2018, you would have potentially, you know, 12 months of payments. I will turn it back to Tax and Finance on two particular questions I have. Is one, is there when you remit back, is it going to be on the same schedule as sales tax, or is it going to be a quarterly thing? And then the other question is there any administrative fee that you take for administering this before you send the money back to the county?
Okay, and I can address those, Dave. It's a straight quarterly basis. So it's sales tax like, but we didn't fully incorporate this into sales tax processing, and it doesn't follow the same sales tax revenue distribution scheme. So it's going to be straight. It's going to be remitted back to the counties on a straight quarterly basis. On the second question about our administrative allowance, we are authorized to take an administrative allowance because the provisions of the law incorporate all the provisions of Article 28 and 29. And Article 29, as you know, for sales tax does allow the state to retain an administrative, reasonable administrative costs for sales tax purposes. We're looking into it. We expect it would follow, that our calculation of that amount will follow the same procedures as sales tax. We haven't yet set an amount, but it certainly would be no more than that. But we would, you know, we're looking into calculating a fee based on what our administrative costs are, along the same lines as we do currently for the administration of local sales taxes.
Okay, so Mary Ellen, another question here is: Are there any restrictions on the new wireless surcharge revenue? How can they be used? I don't believe there are. Katie or Dave, do you know? No,
Well, there are. How the money can be used, there are, and that's in new section 186G.
Okay.
But what the restrictions in 186G are the same restrictions that existed in current county law, so that it has to be spent for various 911 related purposes. And there were like two slightly different permutations of spending authority in the current county law provisions, and the new law incorporates all of them. So whatever authority a county had before to spend, they have at least that now.
Okay. Question is, if the county currently does not have a surcharge, post or pre, and they do not apply by November of 17, can they apply in the future in 2018 or beyond?
Yes, they can apply at any point for the beginning of a at the beginning of a sales tax quarter. So March, June, September, and December. So for a county that doesn't have a surcharge, that is thinking about it, and if they want to take a little more time and get in at a later quarter, they can. The same timing of the 90 days, 30 with waiver would apply. But for a county, you know, the reason that there's an urgency around December 1 would really be for the counties who currently have a surcharge, who are relying on that revenue and want to maintain that without interruption.
Okay, this question might be for David Lucas or Kate Holman, but the question is, if the county does not participate in the prepaid resolution, are they still eligible for state Homeland Security PSAP grants?
Yes.
So the concurrence in the room is yes, this would not jeopardize the ability to receive the formula-based grants.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any limitations in that area.
The question is, next question, Mary Ellen, is auditing purposes. Will the counties be given an explanation as to vendor activity so that they know the frequency of the sale, how is that remittance backup going to, is there any remittance receipts or any backup showed to the local government?
So we anticipate that's going to work out the same way as sales tax does. We can share information with the proper officer of the county about particulars of returns, and because we incorporated all the provisions of Article 28, we believe that would apply. So we'll be able to give information as necessary.
Okay, just checking to see if there are other questions that we missed. There are, again, the enabling resolutions have been mailed to you or emailed to you by the State Department of Tax and Finance. They are on the Association of Counties website under the section Rescuing 911. This PowerPoint will be posted there as well. I think that'll do it with questions that we have received. If you do have a question, you could send it in now. But I think that will do it. We appreciate everyone's participation here today, and some contact information if you want to jot it down for Mary Ellen at the State Department of Taxation and Finance, and David Lucas of the Association of Counties, and his contact information shown here on the last slide. Mary Ellen and Stephanie, again, I'd like to thank you folks and the New York State Department of Tax and Finance for assisting the local governments and ensuring that the cellular surcharge is collected and the procedures to do so, educating the local government officials.
Thank you very much for including us. We're glad to help.
Okay. Thank you. That will conclude today's webinar.